everybody, and welcome to Thought Raid, a show where we take on thoughts and find better ways of thinking about them. I'm Brandon Brown, owner of United Gamers Nations and a lay counselor, and with me today is, wrong key, Tim DeNock of Break the Meta, and welcome. Today is Monday, which means it's Get Naked Monday, where we metaphorically get naked and talk about things that are going on in our personal lives and specifically how we're handling them. And I've got an interesting announcement for you guys. This is something new, hot off the press. One of the things we're thinking about doing to kind of shift things up with Get Naked Mondays, to do something a little bit different, is we're thinking about having one day I'll talk about something in my personal life. The next day, we'll open the door for anyone who is watching us to come and join us for that Monday to talk about what they're specifically going through, and we talk with you through it. And then Tim, and then we go back to another person to come in and talk about different things with us. So if that interests you, and you would like to specifically be with us on stream talking about whatever you're going through, we'd love to have you. Just let us know. We got many ways you can get in contact with us. You can let us know in comments. You can let us know in Discord. You can message us. And most importantly, also, you can send us an email at thoughtraid@gmail.com. But let us know if you're interested in doing that. We love to have guests on these days, so let us know. Mm-hmm. That said, welcome. We today we're going to be talking about, should I speak or should I hold my peace? And this has just been a really important topic for me, especially because of all the crazy stuff that's going on with the government right now, with things still weirdly in the air. And not really sure what's supposed to be happening. Like, it's so tempting to start talking about that. And if you are my friend on Facebook, you'll know that I made a post very quickly, which wasn't a bad post, honestly, but it could have been better on Facebook the minute the advent of all this stuff was happening. And it really got me thinking about, as a leader, to be even more conscientious of what I say, when I say it, for those who are looking to me and listening to what I have to say. I want to make sure that I lead well and represent Christ well. So this is a very important topic to me, and this is something that's been specifically on your heart, Tim. This is something I really want to kick off to you to talk more about what God has been showing you about. Should we speak or should we really not really say anything right now?
Yeah, man, current events are weird and social media is exceptionally weird. And it's even more weird when you have a position where you have influence in people's lives. I'm not being pretentious saying, oh, we have a position, whatever. You have friends on Facebook and people care about how you feel if you're actually friends. I mean, you have those people that are just there. You don't know how they got on your friends list. You don't even remember who they are.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's like, okay, well, Matt Peterson makes a post, our pastor, for those of you who don't know, and it's like, oh, okay, opinion, great. I'm going to give more credence to this opinion. But then you have Joe Schmo that I met at GameStop 20 years ago, and they're talking about this thing over here. It's like, I'm not going to notice that as much. And, we have this complex in our minds where we can think that we are bigger and more important than we actually are. Mm. My buddy Eric Grayler was talking about, I forget exactly what it's called, but it's a concept where you are a different person based on who's viewing you, which is kind of interesting. It's like, Brandon, your perception of Tim is much different than my wife Ariane's perception of Tim, which is much different than God's perception of Tim. And that's also different from my perception. There's all these different Tims, right?
Yeah.
And yet I think that I think that we all have a tendency to assume that what we see in ourselves is how other people see us. And so our words mean a lot, especially when they feel a certain way. So why are we talking about this? And there's a lot of stuff going on right now, man. All the stuff with Trump and DC and Biden. Brandon, you just told me that Pope Francis just got arrested for...
That's what I'm hearing. And I had a friend that kind of posted a video of some of the stuff that was going on in the Vatican and stuff, and I was like, what?
Yeah. That's going on, and then you still have all the Black Lives Matter movement. All there's stuff with that going on. There is,
Antifa.
there's stuff going on where they're changing. What is it? I think Pelosi is trying to pass a bill where you can't use the word woman or man. Like everything's being very gender neutral, and um, I mean that's a whole other topic. But there's just so many things to focus on, and
Mm.
if you were a social mediaite,
Media.
if you're a medianite, if you're a social media night, now is the best time to be on social media because there is so much you can say about so many different things.
Mm.
The tabloids are not they're not seeing a drought right now.
Yeah.
But today's topic is how do you know when to speak and when to shut your mouth? And that's tough, man, because we all feel like our perspective needs to be heard. We all have a longing to be heard, but we're not meant to say everything about everything. Jesus didn't continually run his mouth about whatever, and if you think about think about the people in your life who were the most profound examples of peace, confidence, love, influence. They don't talk as much as you think that they do. They have a platform, and they have a specific forum that they are responsible for in which they talk, but they don't just go out there, speaking to the wind on a mountaintop, And so that just got me thinking. There was a friend of mine who posted something, and I don't mean to call them out because I agree with what they said. I don't necessarily agree with how they said it.
Mm.
But the sentiment essentially was just calling out supposed Christians and prophets on how some of them can view Trump,
Mm-hmm.
right? Specifically, there is a belief out there that Trump is the second coming of Christ. Trump should be hailed as a god. Hail Trump. Instead of hail Jesus. Yeah, and that's a really interesting perspective, and it's weird to think that in the Christian world. More specifically, it's weird to hear that from the perspective of somebody who follows Jesus. It's weird to people who are on the outside of Christianity looking in. It's like, what a weird cult, I'm sure it's weird to other countries seeing all this stuff going on. And it kind of kindled a fire in my chest, and on many different levels, like defending Jesus, defending the idea of Christians. For some reason, I wanted to defend Christians. I'm not supposed to. That's stupid, because Christian culture is often really awkward and weird and baseless, like there's so much in Christian culture that doesn't line up with who Jesus is, but the fire was still there, and I was like, okay, well, I just need, what? I have all these people who listen to me, and I am Tim, I have a podcast, and, I'm a life coach consultant, and, I've got clients, and people people care what I have to say, It's weird because I believe that I care more about what I say than a lot of 98% of the people out there care about what I have to say. But that's true about all of us, But in that moment, like, I was talking to Ariane. I was like, hey, babe, I feel like I need to go upstairs and do a Facebook Live message and just tell people everything is going to be okay. This was a couple nights ago prior to me reading this that my friend posted.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because sometimes God will give you that nudge because he wants you to do something, and especially when you feel the move of the Holy Spirit, it's like, I really don't want to do this, but I feel like God wants me to. So I came up here and I sat down and I was like, what is it exactly that I want to say?
Mm-hmm.
Because when it's like getting up to the microphone is one part of it, but actually having something to say and executing, that's a different thing. Kind of like when Abraham was taking Isaac up the mountain, agreeing to do it and doing it are two completely different things. So anyways, I was thinking, man, I really want to spend time with her tonight, and we'd have limited time, but I came upstairs and I sat in front of my little microphone here. I had Facebook Live queued up, and I've never done a Facebook Live by myself before, ever. I'm like, I could see people are scared now. They lack perspective. People are at each other's throats. They're not seeing each other well. There's like all this stuff going on. They just need to hear me say something. I need to say something that's going to help them have peace, And it's weird because once I got in front of the microphone, I realized I don't know what to say. I don't know exactly what I want to say. So I was like, let me go to Facebook and see if I can get some inspiration. And boy, if you need inspiration for something to talk on and you go to social media, that is the wrong thing to do. I was going through it and it's just like, it was weird, man. It's none of the stuff that I've been seeing, whether it's Trump, BLM, whatever, all the stuff that has been filling my feed that people have been going on about. None of it was there. It was, hey, here's my son, and oh, here's a picture of my kids. Here's this trip we went on. I'm like, oh, what? This isn't what I'm looking for inspiration for. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. Okay, so God doesn't actually want me to do this. Maybe there was an element of Tim wanting to do this because I felt like I was bigger than I was and that I had the capacity to do. I mean, I do have a capacity to some degree to put words out there and to like when we do these things, Brandon, these thought raids, our hope is that people see it and are positively influenced by it.
Yeah.
But why are we talking about this today? Well, I feel like it's a common theme in so many people's lives. Like they don't know when to speak and when to not speak. Whether it's in a relationship, whether you have a platform, especially if you're feeling emotional about something, how do you navigate when to say something and when not to say something? So I kind of want to tackle that and put myself on the cross today and go through my process with it. Let me pull this up. I made a note about why we're talking about this. I feel like going into it, I had a savior mentality, thinking that I need to say something. My feelings need to be known. It's like a duality. It's like I need to save people, but really I just want my feelings to be. We'll talk about that in a second. Let me post this. But how do you know when to shut up and when to actually speak your mind? I think it's really important to identify how you feel about it. Like, how do you actually feel about it? Because, man, there is one person in particular on Facebook that I actually had to unfollow, and it's the only person in the history of me being on Facebook, and I think I've been on there for like 10 years or something, that I've ever unfollowed. My heart really goes out to them because I saw a conversation between them and a friend's parents recently, and they were just going back and forth, and these are grown adults insulting people on a social media post.
Oh, jeez.
It's saying things like just and it's weird because it started off as an opinion.
Mm-hmm.
One post started off as an opinion, and somebody posted another opinion, and it quickly degraded from opinion and then different viewpoints on opinion to "you're stupid, just block me." And then the person responds, they said, "Oh, I thought you blocked me," and I'm like, "You guys are adults, you know." And I've done that too in the past. I remember I was in a forum a long time ago, and I didn't really understand why I felt or believed the way that I believed, because I wasn't even a Christian back then. But it was an argument about whether homosexuality is moral, right, or wrong, or whatever. I didn't really have a basis for it. I was just going off feeling, and there was this huge argument. But I think it's really important to understand what you feel about a specific thing, and then why you feel that way about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I could go on and on and on and on and on and on and on about drug use, because in my family different people have had issues with drug use. But am I actually thinking about it clearly? If I were to get up on stage and talk about it right now, would it come out eloquently and from a place of composure, or would it come from a place of me just spewing, here's how I feel? And that's a big thing in social media now. People will get, and that's why social media can be so toxic, because people have a platform now where it's uncensored to a degree, and it's you can get on there without any qualifiers or qualifications. You don't have to take a test to be on social media. You just get on there, and people who are your friends, lucky or unlucky enough to be, are exposed to your thoughts and feelings. And sometimes when you just post feeling, it'll hit people the wrong way, because if you have over, I don't know, 100 friends or whatever, there's something called, what is it? Circle bias, sphere bias, or
You're talking about echo chamber?
Yeah, that's another term for it, an echo chamber. It's where you find a group that thinks so like yourself
Mm-hmm.
that you kind of lick each other's wounds,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And you see that a lot because when I was watching this post argument between these two people, I went to each of their pages, and each of their pages, this party over here was saying, "I'm sorry they said that. I can't believe they said that. Do you need me to go beat them up?" And this party over here was saying the same thing in defense of this person against this person. Um, and I'm thinking to myself, oh gosh, man, there's so much feeling like these people like each other. They are good human beings, both of them. All of them are good human beings, even the people supporting them. Why is this going the way it is? And I think it's because, there are so many unfiltered feelings where people speak without addressing their own heart first. It's that whole don't call out the speck in your neighbor's eye without first identifying the log in your own eye. But looking at it specifically from an influence standpoint, especially if you are the leader of a household, or if you are a parent, or if you are a leader of a church congregation, if you have staff at work, if you have a community thing that a group, whatever, if you have people who look to you, I think one of the most damaging things is speaking from how you feel, unfiltered, and speaking from a place of here's how I feel, but the truth is this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you and I both have stints on Facebook where, even trying to process those feelings and then speaking something, it doesn't come out properly,
Yeah.
Because our perspective isn't always perfect. And when we get in those echo chambers, as you put them, it's really easy to have those negative feelings reinforced without them being challenged. And then when they're finally challenged, it's like, oh no, you're my adversary instead of just a different perspective. And when each person is doing that, ooh, what a calamity.
Yeah.
But it's tough, identifying how you feel about something without seeking validation from a third party. It's very revealing.
Yeah.
What do you think about that, Brandon?
Well, I mean, it's. I think it can be difficult in general for people to have outside opinions from where they're used to growing up and thinking. Like, regardless of what it is, it can be very difficult for that because
Yeah.
after a while of being around and being wrong many times over, it's exhausting feeling. Like it really takes a lot to put yourself out there for the potentiality to be wrong. So it's a lot easier to be surrounded by people that are on the same page. But the only difficult part is that then you lack perspective on other things you may not be recognizing or realizing because you only live in one corner of the world and have so many friends. And so
Mhm.
the experiences you have and share together may be different from someone else who's on another side of the world and have a different set of friends. Um, so I've been seeing. I mean that's something that I can just see in general. Like it's not easy. Not to say it's not possible. Like it is
Yeah.
possible. You can surround yourself with different types of friends with different beliefs. That just takes work, and in a time where things are super strained, I don't think a lot of people want to put in the work to have that kind of diversity because they already
Mhm.
are exhausted to have differences of opinion to what they're believing. So it's like it takes energy and time to listen to someone who doesn't think as you do,
Yeah.
without becoming defensive or afraid or angry or whatever, hearing whatever that is. And so it's just like, it could be really
Well, like
hard.
our position on homosexuality, you and I share the same position on that, the same viewpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a podcast a while back where we welcomed Samuel Perez on here to talk about his position on homosexuality, um, and how, as he put it, God saved him from homosexuality. Now, the verbiage there can be taken all sorts of different ways. But his basic concept was he replaced acting as a homosexual because he felt like it hindered his relationship with God with a relation like a more full relationship with God, right? And I would encourage you to go check out his stuff, Samuel Perez, or on YouTube, Samuel Perez. Go
Yep.
listen to his story, whether you believe it or not, just for another perspective. But the reason I bring this up is I have somebody, one of my Twitch followers, who saw the podcast
Mm-hmm.
and he was offended by it, and he sent me a message and he said that was really tough, and I have a problem with the fact that was hosted on your Discord server, and it was in your podcast history. It really offended me. And I just engaged him in questions because there was that part of me, that emotional side, identifying how I felt. It's like, okay, well, I'm kind of disappointed and sad that he's disapproving of me right now for me being associated with that. I'm disappointed with the fact that it seems like we don't believe the same thing. It feels like, oh, we're against each other, you know. I mean, there were all these things that were coming up in me, and I was just feeling defensive, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this is leading into the next question. What is the difference between passion and emotion? Right. I was feeling emotional about it. And Brandon, after the fact, after I talked to the guy, I basically just said, hey, man, whether you're homosexual or not, Jesus loves you the same way. So I'm not called to judge you. I'm called to set a standard. I'm called to, well, and by set a standard, just talk about what biblically the truth is.
Yeah.
That if you follow the truth or if you don't, that doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means that there is something between you understanding how much God loves you.
Mm-hmm.
And like realizing what that looks like. That's all it is. And so I was just saying, hey, we have a difference of opinion. I still love you. We don't have to agree on this. That is okay. Do we believe differently? Yes, we do. Do I believe that you should believe what I believe? I think it would be healthy. That's my belief. Do you have to do it? No, you don't. I still accept you as you are. That's kind of where we left it. And then after the fact, you gave me an arsenal of questions that I should ask because they made the comment, well, homosexuality is natural. And then I didn't really know, like I was emotional. I wasn't thinking properly in the moment. I couldn't put on my consultant hat and ask the right questions. And you said, well, why don't you just ask him, or what the question that you should ask there is, okay, well, where did you get that belief? Why do you believe that it's natural? Why do you believe that it's healthy? And just have a dialogue there, But what's the difference between passion and emotion? And I think, for me, thinking about what you posted, Brandon, you made this long post about the riots, and it was not taken well by one of our friends, and there was a small difference of opinion there, where some things were clarified, and it just got me thinking, like, there are people in history that have changed things for the good because of their passion and their zeal. Mm-hmm. For instance, some of the wars that have happened, some of the movements that have happened, when slavery was abolished, that was a good, passionate move, right? Mm-hmm. But if you look at it, I'm sure there were people who did it from a place of composure and from a place of passion. And there were also people who supported that from a place of emotion. Right. Let's talk about Black Lives Matter for a second. There are people who are approaching it from a place of passion, and there are people who are approaching it from a place of emotion. Much like with this election, there are people who are approaching it from passion and emotion. And the difference is, when you process something, and when you speak on something, and when you verbalize and whatever, represent something from a place of emotion, it's so easy to dehumanize another person, dehumanize another group, dehumanize a different perspective, right? Mm-hmm. And that's how, if you're speaking from emotion, if you just look back your text log or your social media log of you engaging with somebody and you see it degrade, boom, 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 oh, it's no longer about perspective. It's now just about insults. Yep. You find yourself defending yourself, and you find yourself, like, I do this in arguments with my wife. Whenever it starts degrading and I start getting emotional, I stop focusing on our relationship and focusing on a resolution and understanding. It's now all about how I feel and how she's not recognizing how I feel, But passion is a little bit different. Passion is when you have a common goal for the greater good, and you're navigating that, trying to help people understand, but also not trying to force them to change. If you think about it, if you put it to an analogy or a metaphor, emotion is kind of like a bulldozer. It destroys everything in its path, just knocks it down. You look back and there's all this crap behind you. But passion, It's like having a team of people coming and like removing the trees and planting new ones in its place and leaving a path, but leaving a healthy path in its wake. Um, I'm just trying to think of times in my life where I've navigated things through passion than emotion. There was one specifically. Um, I was at work, and I think I've referenced this story before, but I had an employee who wanted to get promoted, and I was like, okay, well, you want to get promoted? I'll start teaching you stuff. And we had a day, a week or two later, where I was going to have him do a project. And I was like, hey, here's how I want you to do this. Here's why we do this, and I'm gonna let you try it. And then after a few minutes, I noticed he's getting frustrated, and he just shakes his head. He's like, I ain't doing that. I was like, wait, what? And he's like, I ain't about to do that. I was like, no, I want you. He's like, no, I'm good. I'm like, wait. You're my employee. I'm your boss. I'm the authority figure here, and you're telling me you're not going to do something that I told you to my face multiple times. Yeah. All right, well, let's go in the back. Right. I'm thinking, okay, well, everything in me wanted to light him on fire. I wanted to exert it. What is it? What does he say? Exert my authority. I wanted him to respect my authority. I wanted to drop the hammer on him and say, you POS, get out of here. Go home. Go home. Quit. I wanted to fire him on the spot. But I knew that the difference between emotion and passion, then passion was trying to lead something to a greater good. Emotion was trying to defend myself, right? So I was like, okay, well, while this would feel good just to send him home, let's have a conversation about this. Let me ask you some questions. Why'd you, let's go to the back. All right, why did you respond that way? Why'd you tell me no? Well, I felt like you were getting me to do your job. Okay, well, why do you think I was trying to get you to do my job? I don't know, you were lazy. Really? Okay, well, what conversation did we have last week? Oh, we talked about my performance and how I wanted another position. Okay. So we talked about your performance and how you wanted a promotion. And now I'm trying to teach you new things. What do you think that means? Oh, you know? And so it's weird. It's like I could have defended my emotion there and navigated that. And it would have felt great, but it would not have gotten the result where the person feels loved and inspired towards another position. But since my passion is building people and my passion is helping people grow and helping them see things they didn't see before and learning how to communicate and learning how to build things, my emotion really didn't matter in the moment. The way I felt it should not have been elevated above me seeing the value in him as a person. Right. And I'm not saying that I'm a special person for doing this because there are many, 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 many more times that I've failed in doing this that I've done it correctly, even in my relationship with Brandon. Like there are so many times I've put my foot in my mouth. But the key is thinking, okay, well, this is the goal and this goal is bigger than me. So my emotions have to be smaller than it. I think that's so important. And, going back to the initial thing of posting on social media, I was like, I'm feeling like I need to post something or I need to have a live stream so I can save people. Okay, well, am I acting out of passion or emotion? But I stopped and I identified how I felt about it. And I was like, I was actually feeling kind of scared because it felt like the world was on fire. I'm like, are we actually going to have a war? Is my home, my family, my wife, my friends, are they going to be threatened? Really? I need to stop this. I got to prevent it. And so I was going to take a stance on social media as the savior of all this, thinking that I was doing good when in actuality I was just giving into my insecurities and fear around the situation.
One of the issues that I have sometimes when I'm acting out of just pure emotion is that I will inevitably say things that will divide me from another person, not intentionally, because everything is done out of care, but also self-defense. But that self-defense pushes people away in unnecessary ways. God's been working on me when it comes to when I speak up in this current season of my life. I feel like he's worked on it in the past, but it's just I guess there's like new circumstance to perfect that, and there probably always will be, but there's just another season of that. But I've recognized that for instance with one of the things that God's been having me work on is when to say something to a friend Because that's been something where he's been showing me where it's like if you feel anxious and you want to say something like specifically, I'm thinking not say something, pray. Like for instance, if I begin to pray for someone because I'm afraid for them, then my prayer will be led by fear rather than by faith. And so God's been teaching me to wait until you've calmed down, and then if it's still a problem after you've come to peace, then pray about it. But pray from a place of peace, and faith rather than from a place of fear about what could happen. So I've been working on that. Like that's been an area where it's like, this not helpful. like you like and God's been kind of he's been kind of like setting me up for all this too. Like I think he's been like intentionally like revealing certain things that to me about myself and about how I hold a position in the spiritual realm and stuff, representing the weapons that he's given me and stuff to make me like when I speak, I need to be conscientious of what I say because of the weapons that I carry, which are not carnal but are mighty through God. Like when I say weapons, I mean my words are weapons. Just to clarify. So I think the Bible talks about the tongue being on fire, and it can set a whole forest on fire. It also can refer to it as being a sword, and that it can cut people. So before you open your mouth, you want to think about what you're going to say, and you want to speak from a place of peace, if possible. I had it like I mentioned before, like between emotion or passion. The last post that I made that was remotely political on Facebook, there was passion in that, because I did get to a place where I was able to calm down somewhat to speak, but it wasn't entirely. There was emotion because I was looking at what other people around me were doing, and then I was getting angry, and then also concerned for the future safety of myself and people. And so then I would, halfway through my post, it turned into a bit of an emotional reaction and then went back into truth again. And so it was halfway there. Just not living on a prayer.
It makes me think, what is it in us that makes us feel like the solution to our emotion is so emergent?
That we have to do something now.
Yeah, it's like I'm feeling this way right now, so I need reconciliation right now.
Yeah, it's got to be different for everybody. My reasoning for specifically doing something or not doing something quickly is usually based out of like fear, and the fear is based out of like, if I don't do it, who will? Or if I don't deal with this now, then I'm going to forget about it and it's not going to be dealt with. Or, it's kind of like hinging on those primary two things of just like, if I don't say something, no one else will, and then it's going to get worse. And it's going to be my fault because I didn't say anything when I had the opportunity, and now here we are down the road, I've lost freedom and protection and stuff, and I'm screwed. Or the other situation of like, if we don't address this now, then I'm going to forget about it, and then it's going to get worse, and then I got to deal with a worser issue than if I had dealt with it the minute it popped up.
That sounds familiar. Didn't we just go through this like 2 nights ago? Well, and that's the thing, if, I don't know, thinking about all the major things in history, like when Winston Churchill gave that speech when he was addressing the world about Hitler, about how Britain was going to rise to Hitler or against Hitler, or like, I don't know, man. There's a time and place for everything, and there are heated moments. Like I always like to think, if I'm on a plane and it crash lands, kind of like in Lost, and there are all these people who are on the island, like, what would my role be? You know how there's all these different people, like the people who are survivalists, and then the people who are good diplomats, and then the people that are like good leaders, and the people who are just kind of like extras in the background that are just like waiting like sheep, like, what do we do? Like what position would I, in the zombie apocalypse, which role would I fill in your party? And, I don't really excel at anything except for just having a decent perspective about things and connecting the dots. And I'm like, okay, well, I'd like to think that I would be one of the leader roles, just helping give perspective and orchestrate like who does what. Not because it's what I want to do for my, what's the word? I'm not self-righteous or anything. It's just like a strength of mine, And I'm like, okay, well, what would that look like? So everybody's going nuts around me. Everything's on fire. People are dying. What would that actually look like? Yeah, John Locke, before he went crazy. And how would I navigate that? And, using John Locke as a good example, there were so many opportunities when he could have spoken. If you think about how all these crazy situations, like in DC, there were, what was that, like 24 or 48 hours or whatever, where people were marching around and like storming and stuff. There were so many opportunities for one person to stand up. Like you read history books and you read stories. Like one of my favorite stories to ever have been privy to, there's two. I love Gladiator and Braveheart. Freaking Sir William Wallace. Oh my gosh, awesome guy. And then you have Maximus. These guys who were just so full of passion and led armies. And even though they both died in the end, spoiler, get over it, it's 15 years old. They both carried out a message. They were martyrs, essentially. But, the crazy thing is, they, as I just put in chat, can you have passion and also composure? There were so many times where they were composed in how they interfaced with certain people, and they chose a specific time in which to do it, especially Maximus. There were so many times where Maximus could have killed the emperor in Gladiator, but he didn't do it because it wasn't the right time, even though his emotions were, I just want to stab this guy in the eye, But, thinking about that same concept from the perspective of Jesus, when I love the scene so much in Passion of the Christ, and just like the whole concept of Jesus when he's going before Pontius Pilate, and all of the Jews are like, he's not our king. Sounds very familiar, doesn't it? I'm not equating Trump to Jesus at all. I'm not doing that. Please don't mishear me. But he's like, Jesus is not the king of the Jews. Crucify him. And freaking Jesus is the king of everybody. He's like, he's God. And they're saying crucify him. He could have snapped his fingers and smote everybody there. But he held his tongue. Pilate said, I am the one person who can save you. Just utter the words. Tell me the truth. Who are you? And Jesus, he didn't say a thing. The only time during that entire exchange was, I might be conflating stories, but the only time during that exchange where Jesus spoke was when he said, give unto Caesar who is Caesar's. My power comes from above, not from a man. Go ahead.
That particularly was before he was before Pontius Pilate, when they were asking him, like, should we pay taxes to Caesar?
Yeah, but, the concept is the same. It's like, Jesus didn't just go around saying, you suck, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. He didn't even go around healing every single person. I'm sure he stepped over certain people to heal this person over here, And that's crazy to me to think that God came to earth, man incarnate, all the power in the world, and there were certain things that he did not do, certain words that were not spoken. So why do we think in our human complex that just because we feel a certain way, it should be known or we should act on it? So can you have passion and also composure? I think so. Absolutely. You can have passion and composure, and that requires understanding what the motive is. So going back to the first story, I was up here, I was sitting, about to go live, about to, save everybody on Facebook from all the crap that's going on in the world. And I was like, well, what am I trying to do here? And I was thinking, like, what is my goal? And my goal is to help people be at peace, but who's going to hear it? Who's actually going to hear this? There are so many perspectives that are thrown on social media. Like, I would love if Facebook was just memes and pictures of puppies and people's kids and whatnot, which is what it should be, and a lot of people agree with that sentiment. And a lot of times the same people who say that go right on and say, man, it just pisses me off how Facebook is like this. And, boom, attack that same concept with emotion. But I was sitting there and I was like, okay, well, what is my goal? And my goal is to do this. And it's like, okay, well, really, all I'm trying to do is have a savior complex, thinking that I have more impact in people's lives than I actually do. You know, and then I just started praying about it, and I was like, God, what is this deal? And as I started praying about it, that's when I saw that conversation between those people I mentioned earlier, where it looked like it was degrading, and then both their sides were talking about each other, and God was like, I want you to pray for these people specifically. I want you to pray for how they view themselves, how they view each other, and specifically for one of them, how much hate they seem to have in their heart and are blind to it. I was like, all right, so God wants me to speak, but he doesn't want me to speak on a social platform. He wants me to speak in the form of prayer.
Mm-hmm.
And so, my higher goal is truly healing for people, and truly people seeing who Jesus is, and truly seeing that God cares about them. And, as Christians, it's really easy to think that we can do something. We can think that it is us. Like with this podcast, Brandon, with this podcast, we are going to change lives. But, kind of like up here.
Not if God doesn't empower us, we won't.
Yeah, it's not me, but Christ in me. There's so much fake confidence that we get by thinking that we are going to be the answer for people. If you are the answer for somebody, you are always going to have to be the answer for that person.
That's too exhausting.
And all the people who have poured into me are not my answer either. If that was the case, then I would have a very dependent psyche where my life is in shambles unless these people are present. And you can't be that to people, and people cannot be that to you. And that's why all the social media stuff breaks down, because people put all their faith in a belief or all their faith in a perspective. And all those perspectives and faiths have an origin somewhere in some party, some shape or person or form. And the only thing that can't be shaken is Jesus. I'll take a break for a second because I've been talking for 10 minutes. Brandon, what do you think?
I think just thinking about specifically the topic of passion, composure, and stuff of that nature. I'm being reminded of what I feel like God's been showing me when it comes to my posts in general on Facebook, and what am I trying to accomplish with those things, and to recognize that it's not there. I feel like there are people in this world that have been given the anointing to share news and to do it well and to talk about it in a way that people can hear it and are receptive to it, and that's their calling. I don't think that's my calling. With the amount of things that, I have to go through even to know what is and is not truth, it's something that I can talk about with you. It's something I could talk about with a friend in person. Maybe I can bring it up in a situation, like a small group situation, like let's say at your Wednesday night group, and the conversation's leading in that direction. But like debating and talking about things has never been an area that God's really opened the door for me to be eloquent in, ever. I don't know why. Not my forte. And so it's like to spend time, but what God has given me an anointing for and has blessed me and given me inspiration for and shown me how to do it, is to help people when it comes to taking thoughts captive. So for me to be able to make posts and say we should or should not be doing this is what the media is saying, whatever, like it's not my place. And I feel like anytime I've been posting in those places, it's always been something based out of fear, concern, or worry, which does not help the world. The problem the world has right now is it needs to know how to trust God and be at peace. I can help with that. I cannot help with what is actually truth or not truth, because my time, energy, and emotions goes into perfecting myself. Not to say that I'm working to be perfect, but just making sure that there's no space for sin in my heart, and helping other people with what they're going through, and just leading them into God's truth wherever the lie may be in their hearts, and just showing them God's truth in that matter. So that's something I've been thinking about moving forward, when I make a post and stuff, that rather than just immediately reacting to whatever the extreme situation may be, that I can take a second to rest, get out of anxiety. And then after I'm no longer anxious about it, if I still feel like it's important to speak, then I will with God's approval. But if not, my lane, I feel like is more so specifically to speak to people's hearts and thoughts about themselves and about the things that the enemy has been trying to tell them about themselves, which is why it's been so confusing, honestly, about when I should post something or not, because sometimes that does closely interact with what people are believing on, the news, on social media. But I don't know, I've just been kind of looking to refine that more and more. And I think, at least where I'm currently at right now, that it might be just best and smartest, because I can operate from peace in this area more than any other place, to speak from an area of just like how to trust God, how to love him, or let him love you, especially because if he can love you, you'll have plenty of love to give out if you allow him to do that. Just to how to have peace in different situations. What thought processes in our mind is counterintuitive to living a good life. Honestly, that's within the boundaries that God has created for us to thrive.
Yeah. Looking back at the question, can you have passion and also composure? I'm thinking about how, how when something is plentiful, it's not worth as much. Mm-hmm. Think about Halloween. You go around, you get your little bag of Halloween candy, and then you come back and you've got Snickers bars, you've got Twix, you've got candy, you got all this stuff, and it's like, wow, I have tons of candy, whatever. And then you think about like June or something, and you're at a lake retreat, and somebody's like, hey, you want a Snickers? It means so much more because it's in low supply, and it's the same thing, just at a better time and very specific purpose. Kind of like when you have a lunch and you open it up and it's like, ooh, what did mom pack me today? You have a sandwich and you have a candy bar. It's like that candy bar means so much more to you than when it's plentiful and you have so many of them. But I think engaging with people is the same way. When you throw something out there just to throw something out there thinking, well, it's going to stick with somebody because I have 1,500 Facebook friends or Instagram friends or whatever, it's so different than having a one-on-one with somebody saying, hey, let's talk about this. How do you feel? Why do you think that way? Oh, okay. It's that human contact. It's the one-on-one, the building of the relationship. That's when it comes to passion and composure. I think composure relates to passion by how intentionally you funnel it. Mm-hmm. Right? Because as we said before, the difference between emotion and passion is emotion is self-serving. Passion is, greater than you serving. So if there's something greater than you that you're serving, you can do that, and you can be an activist, kind of like PETA is. And I don't want to call
PETA.
Yeah, but those people that, vegans. I'm going to call you guys out for this.
Vegans.
Let's
go.
I'm poking fun. Don't be offended by this, but how there's all these memes out there about how there's that one that says nobody, whatever, and then it shows vegans. Here's my point. I'm a vegan, right? That was a really dumb analogy, but basically the joke is vegans are always talking about the fact they're vegan, whether you ask or not. Right? There are some Christians who do that too. I'm going to talk about Christianity and Christian culture and Jesus, even if you aren't open to it. And if you are open to it, I'm going to say it from a position of condemnation, like you have to change, you have to do this. And then it's like, oh, well, they were open to knowing who Jesus was, but now Jesus isn't such a safe, loving person anymore. Now this person's representing Jesus from the perspective of you're going to hell if you don't follow this. That's a complete oof. That gets me on fire. But,
that is a complete oof.
Yeah. But thinking, okay, well, there are 100 people in this room, and my goal is to show them God's love. Okay, well, I can go to every single person and spread out my God's love, but I am a single person, right? God doesn't need you to do anything. He has a very specific purpose for you because we are all part of one body. As we always say, some of us are a foot, some of us are a hand. It serves two completely different purposes. And so we think, okay, well, in my passion, I have to do everything. In the thought raid, I have to do everything: the video editing, the networking, the talking, the idea production, the content creation. I have to no. In your job, you don't even have to do everything. If you are a manager at a job, if you think you have to do everything, you need a better staff or you need better training. you know, Cody, for instance, is in finance, and there are people who clean the building that he works in. There are people who provide the IT for the servers. There are people who do, and they're all passionate about their position. But the composure is they're only passionate about their position and execute it when they're at their job within a specific time frame in a very defined fashion, right? So the composure to navigate all this is defined by two things, if I can grab my notes. Actually, I'm just going to post all this at once because we're running low on time. So there's three things. I was just talking about, do I just want to be heard, or do I want a call to action? We'll talk about that in a second. But operating in composure requires you to ask two questions: who is my audience, and what is my platform? Right? So if I have a message and there's something that I want to get out there, okay, am I just going to give it to everybody? And am I going to be like a Snickers bar during Halloween? Or am I going to think about who this is for? Like, who would actually appreciate a Snickers bar right now? Who has a need for a Snickers bar right now? And what's my platform? How am I going to get it to them? Am I going to do that as a parent? Am I going to do that as a friend? Am I going to do that? Prime example, on Facebook, there is a nurse friend of ours who has COVID. So she has COVID this week. And she posted that a bunch of her friends brought her food and supplies. And it was awesome, very loving. Now, if those same people had just taken some random elderly person food and supplies, sure, it's like, thanks. But it's thanks instead of, oh, thank you so much. Completely different because it's a different platform. We each have our own different mode of transportation, so to speak. So with my situation, okay, well, I felt like I wanted to communicate something, communicate hope, communicate peace, but who is my audience, right? And if I just went on Facebook, everybody would be my audience.
Ooh.
Right? And some people would care, some people would. I'm sure there are some people who see our thought rate stuff or see my posts and just think to themselves, wow, Tim is kind of a pretentious guy. He thinks he actually has some kind of value to show people. He knows what's going on. Like, how is he I'm sure there are people who think that. There are other people that possibly compare themselves to me. Or that I compare myself to, and there's that dynamic. But then there are like the minuscule amount of that large group that are actually going to get something from it, right? And then my platform is Facebook. So I started thinking about my audience. Okay, well, who is actually within my sphere of responsibility, right? So if you're passionate about something, who's within your sphere, your actual sphere of responsibility, not your elevated personal ego responsibility, thinking that you're out to save everybody on social media.
The world.
Yeah, Jesus said, for those of you who have ears to hear, let them hear. Now, that he meant two things by that. He said, hey, guys, if you're actually listening and if you're going to receive that, come listen. But then also, like, if you receive it, are you actually listening for the content? Are you actually going to get it? There's so many people look at the Bible and they think that it's full of contradiction, and to a degree it is. It's because it's a living document. It requires the Holy Spirit as well. Because I could make one statement and it mean two completely different things to two different people, right? So
depending
who's my
on
audience?
The state of life they're in.
Yeah, exactly. But anyways, all that to say, I was thinking to myself, okay, who's my audience and what is my platform? Well, within my sphere of responsibility, I've got my close friends. I've got my marriage. We have our home group. And then I have all the people that are involved with Thought Raid and Break the Meta. And it's like, okay, well, if I'm not being pretentious and thinking that I'm bigger than I think that I am, let me go to the things that I know that I'm trusted with and start there. Start with my relationships. Go talk to these people who are going to appreciate me engaging them on a one-on-one basis. There's that thing where it says that between you and Oprah is 8 people. Between you and Obama is 8 people. Between you and LeBron James is 8 people. It's the spheres of influence. They say that the most introverted person in the world is going to influence or come in contact with, in some form or fashion, over 100,000 people in their lifetime. And if you think about that exponentially, between 8 people, that's a ton of people. And so it's like, okay, well, what if I engage with one person and what if God's call in my life is to just show one person who Jesus is, truly. And by truly, I mean how to live life, how to engage with others, how to communicate, how to take responsibility for yourself, all this stuff. What if I show one person? Would I quantify myself as a success or failure? Well, what if God was going to take that one person and turn them into, I don't know, Billy Graham or Mother Teresa or whatever, and that person's going to influence millions, you could say, well, I didn't influence 1,000 people. I only influenced one person. Well, maybe that one person is going to influence more than that 1,000 ever would. You never know, right? And that's why, you can't be afraid of humble beginnings. You can't you can't underestimate a mustard seed. You can't underestimate what it's going to grow into and how crazy awesome it's going to be. But, when I took a step back and I looked at it, well, these are the platforms that I'm actually responsible for to some degree. And I know that I'm responsible for it. I know that's what I've been called to and I can speak into without overstepping my bounds. So I'm not going to go on Facebook and say all this stuff because it's not worth it. If somebody asks me to, sure. But guess what? Nobody was on Facebook saying, hey, Tim, could you do a live stream and give us perspective? And even to our group, I didn't just say, blah. I said, hey, guys, how are you feeling?
Yeah, I remember that.
I asked questions. Do you guys even care to hear? Are you because a lot of times you'll think that something is blowing up and it's not. You'll assume that people feel the same way you do. And guess what? They don't. You'll assume they have the same struggles and the same perspectives as you do. So you'll say, okay, well, I want to speak this stuff and, I want to make a change. And well, guess what? You didn't have to in the first place because it doesn't relate to their situation. And relating is what communication is. And B, nobody asked you. And that's the thing about podcasts too. Nobody is asking us to make this content. We're just putting it out there. Whether we succeed or fail, that's well, it's a risk. But in relationships and stuff, it's completely different. Like on my own, when you are acting in emotion, it's like Tim, nobody's asking you to say this. You're just doing this for yourself, and that's a rude awakening. So that's the other question. Do I want to just be heard, or do I want to call to action? And that I don't know. When you're honest with yourself, I think 90% of the stuff that comes out of our mouth when we speak, when we're trying to think, should I say this or should I not? We just want to be heard. We just want to be validated. We just want to know that people know how we're feeling. And it's a very selfish process.
I feel like... Go ahead. Sorry. I was gonna say I feel like that probably would depend on the person's emotional and or spiritual maturity level. Because, like, at this point in my life, most of the things that I post is a call to action, not necessarily because I want to be heard. Like, I've seen, and I feel like that's the case because I've seen people post things and gotten way much more views and likes than I have, and it doesn't really matter to me. Like, there's a moment where I get to choose if it matters to me. But after choosing for it to not matter, most of the time if I'm going to say something, it's because I recognize that there's a discrepancy that needs to be dealt with, and I want it to be known so people can grow from that place and no longer be limited in that area. But, like, in the beginning, though, earlier on in my life, for people that are in a place where they're not really emotionally or spiritually mature, then, yeah, like, people just wanting to be heard... and just to be validated or things of that nature.
Yeah,
is a thing.
Oh, go away notification. Yeah. Do I want to be heard or do I want to call to action? And honestly, guys, there are only so many calls to action that need to be done. When you boil it down. There are so many. Well, let me say this: there are only so many public calls to action that need to be made. Most of those should be done in a very personal way, in a very one-on-one way. If you look at Jesus, there were only a couple times where he was preaching in front of large groups of people, and even then he was speaking in parables. He wasn't directing his speech and commentary to one specific person. There were only a few times, like when he went to the temple and was like, you crazy, what are you doing? Cracking the whip, flipping the tables, and he was like, hey, you got, or when people addressed him, the Pharisees came to him and were asking all these questions, and because people came to him asking the questions, he turned it right back around on them and gave them a call to action, like, okay, well, let's examine your motives. It was when he was one-on-one with people that he healed them and then spoke to them or engaged with them. Like when he was having dinner with his disciples, he said, hey guys, I want you to drink of my blood and eat of my body. And here's what I want you to do. And, that was a call to action, but he didn't do that to thousands of people. He did it to people that he trusted and people he knew would steward his words well. When I was thinking about this whole concept, I was thinking about in the Bible where it says, don't throw your pearls before swine. Right? If your words carry any weight, if your words have any wisdom, and if you consider your words valuable, why would you just throw them out in front of anybody? Are you one of those people where you just talk to talk? There are so many people where it's like, I don't want to talk to you because you never shut up. You never ask questions. You never engage the people around you. It's exhausting. It's like, communication with you is empty because all you want to do is be heard. You don't want to engage. There's no call to action. There's nothing that you're trying to do. You're just trying to get people to know who you are. You're trying to get people to know how you feel. And while that is important, when that's all your focus is, you're not focused on people as a whole. You're not focused on the greater good. You're not focused on the relationship. You're focused on you.
Who your friends are is very important in all this too, though, because like if you are surrounded by people that just take and take and take and take, but no one there build up inside of you, then the amount of reach you can have in the first place will also be decently limited. It will be limited. That's what I've experienced. It's like I don't know what you were talking about. Just made me think about it, like a period of time last year where I began to realize that I'm not omnipresent, and I was spending more time with people that were not pouring into me, but I was pouring into them, so that I ended up just being anxious and burning out and not having a lot to give. I don't know. For some reason, that made me think of that. Like, it's important, like, that you have, like, recognizing, I think going back into, like, should I speak or should I not speak, like, who should I speak to is another thing, like, also especially because, like, there may be something that needs to be said, but there'll be some people that are be more apt to listen to what you're saying than others. And so if you're spending your time in passion talking to people that are not listening, you're talking about pearls before swine, you're throwing out precious and valuable resources of literally energy and soundness of mind out to them and getting nothing back in return. And it's something, but where, if you do that, you run the risk of them turning around and trampling you. Like, it's just like who you talk to is important just as much as whether you should or should not in the first place. Like, if you make a mistake and you speak from emotion, but you do so with people that love you, then it's really easy to recover from that because they understand you, they know your background, there's passion, or there is compassion. But then if you're just throwing out what you're feeling and you're doing it for emotion to people that are you don't know, then there's not as much compassion in that, and people can easily trample on you as well. So I think maybe another aspect of thinking at, like, should I speak or should I not, is who am I speaking to, and am I being conscientious to who I'm sharing this with, so that way I can continue to share more. Because if you keep sharing your passion with just anyone, you will be running out of passion quickly because not everyone's going to get it and pour back into you. But as you're sharing with people that are hearing you, not to say you only do that, and that may even go back to what we were talking about originally with echo chambers, why some people fall into the trap of being in an echo chamber because all they do is talk to people that understand them and listening. But
Hmm.
I feel like, if you're conscientious enough to have that balance where you're having people that understand where you're coming from, that can be pouring back into as you pour into them, and then as you have energy and you're able to do so from passion and not emotion, pour into other people, then to do so, just making sure that there's balance in that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the best things you can do when determining whether your audience should be your audience is ask questions. I always have to go back to the Bible to what's the word? Like make sure my thought process is sound. There are so many emotions and so many weird thoughts that I have sometimes, and I have a very creative mind. And it's like, okay, well, this makes sense, but is it factual? Like, should I follow it, right? So I go to the Bible. But anyways, I think it's really cool how Jesus chose who to talk to. There were so many people in towns that he went to, and there are towns that refused him and towns that accepted him. But when he broke the bread and all that stuff, there were like 5,000 families in front of him. And he was talking on all these parables, and instead of just giving it to him straight and speaking his message, and he was freaking God, on a mountain talking to these people, he didn't just say, here's how you should live life. He said, well, here's this parable, and I want you to seek your own understanding, figure it out. And the only people who saw it were the disciples. Hey, Jesus, or Lord, or Master, or whatever they call him, excuse me, when you said this, what did you mean exactly? Oh, okay. So you're asking, well, let me ask you a return question. What do you think of it? Well, okay, well, let's clear this up, right? When you have people that engage in dialogue and you can tell they're not doing it from a position of defending their views, and you can tell they're doing it from a position of, hey, I'm actually primed and ready to grow, like they're a student. Well, you have your answer. You have somebody that's going to listen because they're not going to fight with you. They're not going to refuse you. But, the Bible also says that teachers are under a lot more scrutiny than students.
Yeah.
So if you're going to take that position, you have to understand that
The risk.
yeah, there are risks and there is responsibility, and you have a responsibility, as I just posted, to ask yourself, am I representing myself or am I representing Jesus? Because it's really easy to get on our human high horse and think that we've arrived,
Yeah.
when in actuality, the more you lead, the more you have to follow.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I really think that, like, you should be very conscientious of, am I speaking from a place of passion or emotion? Because, like, the amount of people, for instance, an area that's probably emotion, probably not passion, I think a lot of people in the church have really gotten wrong with, is every time there's new technology, they just...
It's the devil.
It's the devil. It just immediately, it's because they look at the people that don't handle the new piece of technology correct, and then forget that it's just as neutral as money is in general. Like, it's not evil, it's not good, it just is. And, like, you could use it for good and sanctify it and, like, enjoy it, and then help people who also enjoy it. Like, you don't just have to immediately throw it out because of that some people are addicted to it. Like,
that's how people get stuck in tradition. Because if you look at the Pharisees, they had the truth and all the knowledge, but they got stuck in the tradition. And when something came along that wasn't exactly as they had planned or pictured, or something new, and it threatened the way they've always done it, it's like, oh, that's the devil. You're the Antichrist. And they even called Jesus out. He does works, but by who? He must serve Beelzebub or whoever. But
he cast out
anyway.
demons because he's the prince of demons, and he was like, if I was the prince of demons, like, why, if Satan were to be divided against Satan, then Satan's own kingdom would fall. Like, what are you talking about? Like, no. Like, no, that's not how this works. Hello.
Yeah. Well, to sum it all up, and I'm sorry, guys, we went over by 9 minutes. To sum it all up, how do you know when you should speak and when you should shut your mouth? I think if you look back over our notes, you have to identify how you feel. How do I really feel about this, right? And then identify, okay, is what I'm feeling fueled by passion or emotion? Is it serving the greater good, and do I actually need to take action on it, or do I just need to resign to the fact and reconcile the fact that this is a me problem? Because oftentimes it is. understand and seek out how to have composure with your passion. Understand that just because you have passion about it doesn't mean that it's everybody's responsibility to respond well to that passion, or for you to extend that passion to everybody. It's for a very specific purpose, in a very specific way, in a very specific time. That's what composure is. And then ask yourself, okay, well, I have composure and I have passion. Do I just want to be heard, or do I want a call to action? Like, do I want to do something with it? Right? Because you can see how great your call is, or your calling and whatever. And you could get on your high horse and think, oh, well, there's this cool thing that's at my doorstep and I'm supposed to do something with it. Well, am I doing it for me, or is there something I want to achieve? And if so, I have to take people with me. I have to inspire change. I have to invite people to join me, right? Identify your audience and your platform. So who is going to hear and by what means? And then ask yourself, okay, well, in all this, am I being prideful and representing myself? Do I think that it's me doing this? Is it in my strength? Or am I representing Jesus? Is it me, or is it Christ in me? And if you follow those things, you're going to be okay. And guys, if you follow that, you'll understand that we're only really supposed to speak about 10% of the time, much less than we feel like we're
Quick
supposed
to hear, slow to speak, and slow to get angry.
Yeah.
Yep. So yeah.
But that's it.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I want to thank you guys for watching. It's been a lot of fun. We broadcast every week on Mondays, Fridays, and Saturdays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we'll be live again this Friday at 4 p.m. If this has really blessed you and you've enjoyed listening to us, please consider subscribing to us. We would like to continue to expand Thought Raid, to hire new people to give you even better videos, even better quality and stuff. We want to hire a video editor. We want to hire people that can help us with the finances and stuff. So if this has really blessed you, please do consider supporting us so that we can bring on people full time and have this be our complete and total focus. And other than that, I want to make
Yeah, real quick. I just wanted also to say a huge thank you to our Patreon supporters. We have 2 new Patreon supporters this week.
Yes.
Kyle joined, 3. Kyle joins, and Graham and Kristen Sebring. Thank you guys for believing in us and supporting us.
Yes.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. Guys, just before everybody, we just want to say that we really appreciate your investment, and we're going to do good things with it.
Yep, and we will be having a little thing up in the corner that will scroll with all of our Patreons coming up soon. That is something I'll be working on, as well as our first thank you letter, which will be signed by us heading to you directly. So I'm excited to have that ready for you guys. But yes, thank you guys for those who already are supporting us. We're very grateful for you. You are making this possible, and we pray that God blesses you and just pours back into everything that you pour into us tenfold. And so one final announcement, and then I'll be done. This Saturday, mark your calendars. Me and Eric will be live again at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we'll be having another prayer night. So if you guys have anything that's on your heart that you would like for us to pray about going on your lives, or family life, or friend, whatever it is, let us know. Probably be best if you had things going on in your life. I realize I say that. I know sometimes people bring up things that they probably shouldn't. So things going on in your life, things that are bothering you, making you afraid, whatever it may be, bring it on. We will be praying for that today at 7 p.m. So we'd love to have you for that this Saturday. But other than that, I want to thank you guys for watching, and we will see you again Friday, 4 p.m. You guys have a good night.